Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we're going to take a special deep dive today into Standard. We're still going to check in on Legacy as well as Modern, as we always do, and at the end of the video we'll have some other notable cards, some of which impacting Commander. But Standard is the big headline for the week. Of course, we're a week removed from the first major Standard tournament since the new cycle began, and that was the Star City Games Open Dallas. So those deck lists, even though a lot will change between week 1, week 2, and week 3 as we go forward, those deck lists have had an impact on the market, and we're going to see exactly what that looks like when it comes to the values of singles. Now, quickly before we get started, a fast reminder, we're not going to see any Ixalan specific cards in this particular video. They're still very turbulent, moving around a lot, so I didn't want to include them in the regular Market Watch, but we did do a special edition a few days ago, and we're going to do another follow-up special edition a couple days from now. So we will check in with those cards separately, and once they stabilize, I'll roll them into the regular Market Watches. Now, real fast before we get started, if you're looking for a way to support the channel and what we do here, just check out the description below. You'll find our Patreon page listed below. You're going to find some Amazon links for products if you make any purchases. Once you go into those links from Amazon, we'll get a small percentage. And finally, Flipside Gaming has given our viewers a promo code. Really awesome of them. They just restocked 2 for Iconic Masters if you're looking to pre-order that. And also, for those of you interested in the singles market, they have a really awesome buy list function there you may want to check out too if you're looking at moving some cards. With that being said, let's get into the cards for today. We'll begin with the top 5 standard cards that have lost value this week. And no surprises here. We're going to be looking at some cards that didn't play a huge role in week 1. Coming in number 5, Hour of Devastation, down 26 cents to $3.22. So this, of course, being from the set Hour of Devastation and being a rare, that means a lot of packs have been open recently. The market's pretty saturated. And at least week 1, it didn't look like Red is really interested in a board sweep. I mean, they continued what they were doing from the previous meta, which is Ramanep Red style decks. Some burn, but a lot of small creatures. They don't want to play Hour of Devastation. Now, sweep spells were popular, though, in some control decks, like the Approach control deck. We'll be talking more about that in a few minutes. So the sweepers that you saw in the format were white. Number 4, Gideon Martial Paragon, down 27 cents to $4.67. Now, this is the Gideon that comes in the Planeswalker deck for Amonkhet, so you cannot get this in regular packs of Amonkhet, which sometimes leads to some weird pricing, because even though big box stores will stock these, and you'll find a lot of these in your LGS and such, there's a lot out there, but a lot of times players don't want to spring for the whole deck, so they're happy to buy the single if the price is right. This one recently went up a little bit due to the fact that some players thought that maybe they could brew a Gideon tribal deck for Standard. At least when we saw week 1, it didn't feel like any of them really got there, and because of that, this is already starting to drop a little bit. Coming in at number 3, Heart of Kiran, down 28 cents to $7.74. So are Vehicles decks dead? No, they're not dead. You're still going to see them show up here and there, especially your Friday Night Magic, but they have declined a lot over the last couple metas, so not surprisingly that this is reflected in the price of this card. Coming in at number 2, the Locust God, down 37 cents to $8.53. Now, this card, wildly popular in Commander, and a lot of Commander players are at the point where they got their copy, so you're seeing a little bit less of a scramble there. And this card, unfortunately, didn't do a whole lot in the first week of the new Standard. Now, another one of the gods did, and we'll see that in a few moments, but this one ticking down a little this week. Coming in at number 1, Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, down 93 cents to $14.94. So I've been talking about this one over the last couple weeks. This particular card is going to continue to tick down. Nicol Bolas will see some play, and has seen some play even in the first week, and maybe some Grixis control builds here and there, but it's the exception to the rule. Control decks right now are leaning more towards Azorius colors, and again, that Approach deck is pretty popular. Doesn't really fit, unfortunately, with Nicol Bolas and what this card is for its casting cost. So when you do see this card show up, it's probably a 1 of, maybe if you're lucky, a 2 of. Considering the limited amount of play it's currently seeing, and that could change in the future, but at least for right now, I expect this card to tick down. Feels like a fair price for this card really is more between $8 and $10. You can probably find it cheaper than the $15 and it's listed here if you look close enough, because there's not a lot of buyers right now for the card. All right, let's move on to the cards that gain value this week. We're actually going to look at the top 10 because there's just so much going on. Coming in at number 10, Mechanized Production, up $1.38 this week to $4. So this has not manifested itself yet in an actual deck that has performed well, but there's a lot of speculation that the treasure token style deck with pirates maybe could get there, and that some people would like to try this card to supplement it. Now, we'll have to kind of see if it works out. Obviously, this card unfortunately didn't truly get there with clues. It would be cool if it could get there with treasure tokens, but time will tell. Number 9, Tezzeret the Schemer, up $1.59 to $9.75. This card is part of the improvised deck, which, does appear to be a thing. It actually came in first place in the Star City Games Classic last weekend, which is the smaller tournament. The Open is the larger 2-day tournament, the Classic being the smaller 1-day tournament. Although improvised decks showed up in the Open too, and 1 or 2 of them had some decent finishes. So this is definitely going to be a card to watch. Regardless of what happens, it's a really fun deck, and that alone is going to draw some players to it. Number 8, Heroic Intervention, up $1.90 this week to $4.74. Now, this is a great sideboard card against any of the control decks that are running a lot of sweepers, like the Approach deck, so we started to see it creep into sideboards already for creature-centric decks especially. The Dinosaur deck was just one example, but there were others too out there. Number 7, Herald of Anguish, up $2.14 to $4.24. Okay, when this card was originally coming out, a lot of people were excited about it. It felt like it was powerful enough, especially with that improvised, but it never really cracked the meta, never really broke through. Well, this is obviously part of that improvised deck now, and it has another chance to be a big card in the game, and you can see its price is definitely already reflecting that speculation. Number 6, Metallic Mimic, up $2.34 this week to $12.99. So maybe partially this is speculation due to the fact that we had Ixalan rotating in, which is all about tribal. So this card, which even did well in the previous meta, in the previous couple metas actually, thanks to zombies, of course it's got to be a good card in this new meta where we have pirates, we have dinosaurs, we have vampires, we have merfolk. Something's got to hit if it's just going to stick at some point, right? Well, it didn't put up huge results or anything week 1, but we did see it show up in a cat deck of all things, which actually looked kind of sweet. So again, because it has shown up in the cat deck and because there are a lot of potential situations for this to show up again in other builds in the future, this card's pretty hot right now. Coming in number 5, Walking Ballista, up $2.56 to $15.30. Now, we talked about how good this card is many times on the show, especially in other formats like Vintage, Shops decks, or in Modern, Eldrazi Tron, Counters Company. But the reason this is going up this week is because it was in the deck that came in first and third place in the Star City Games Open, and that was the Sultai Energy deck. Looked great there. Number 4, Fumigate, up $2.75 to $4.99. So I alluded to this earlier, but the Approach control deck is running a couple copies of Fumigate in most of the builds. It's also running 4 copies, at least in some builds, of Settle the Wreckage, 3 in the main, sometimes 1 in the board. So it's a very aggressive control deck. It's looking for its white sweepers, and this is definitely a good one for it. Coming in number 3, Authority of the Consuls, up $2.78 to $8.99. Now, this was out of the sideboard of some builds of the Azorius Approach decks. Not all of them, though, but some were running 4 of, actually. So I think it looked good enough last weekend that maybe some other players that are running that deck are thinking of adding it to their sideboard. Coming in number 2, Fetid Pools, up $3.79 this week to $8.99. Maybe not too surprising. The color combination of black-blue just looked really good over the first weekend. I don't expect that to change too much. It's also nice that this is an island swamp. It works great with the Dimir Czech land, of course, which is an Ixalan. That's been going up too. As a matter of fact, some of the older copies of that card going up this week too. So yeah, it definitely feels like a lot of people are starting to purchase into their mana bases, especially with this card, Fetid Pools. Coming in number 1, the Scarab God, of $4.40 to $38.99. So I alluded to this earlier, but yes, the Scarab God looked like the real deal all weekend, and it was in a lot of different decks, some energy builds, different variants of those energy decks. It was showing up in a lot of control builds too. Card just looked really, really good, and it has spiked pretty hard over the last week and a half or so. So this trend continues this week, but I will tell you, this feels like maybe the top of the curve for the card. Not to say it won't tick up here and there, depending on some results and some tournaments, but there was a mad scramble for this over the last couple weeks. That scramble is starting to come to an end. As a matter of fact, the card completely stabilized over the last 24 hours. It has stayed at $38.99, which is a good indication that it's probably reaching its peak. So expect this to start coming down. I mean, this is way too high of a price point to maintain, even if it is seeing a lot of play. And keep in mind, usually that's not 4 ofs in most decks. Usually it's like a 2 of or something like that, depending on the build. But take all that into consideration. A lot of packs of the set were open, so this will start to decline. Have a little bit of patience with this one. All right, let's move on to Modern. We're going to look at the cards that have lost value this week. Some interesting things here. Coming at number 5, Vegevine, down 222 to 2456. This card was hot last month. It was in a build that was successful one week. Another week, Saffron Olive featured another build with this card. So it had a lot of hype around it. It's just stabilizing back down to its normal price point, which I'd probably expect to be closer to like $20. Number 4, Dark Confidant from Modern Masters, down 225 to 44.49. So just generally, Dark Confidants have been going down recently. They've been seeing less of the field, especially in Modern, as Jund decks have been less popular percentage-wise. But I do want to point out, last week we saw the original Ravnica one going up, so there's still an appeal for this card, and it will never completely fall off. It's a really good card, just generally. Number 3, Tarmogoyf from Future Sight, down 274 to 114.55. So Goyfs, of course, have been soft. We've talked about this multiple times during the show. But yeah, Tarmogoyf, the original one, does the best at holding its value because it's got that unique art. It's a little bit harder to find being from Future Sight. But even this one has gotten softer. Just a few months ago, this was $130. It's come down quite a bit. But it does feel like it's maybe starting to stabilize a little bit. As a matter of fact, over the last 24 hours, this has even ticked up a little bit. So I don't expect this card to go a whole lot lower. I'd be very shocked if this ever got really below like 110, 105. Number 2, Maelstrom Nexus, down 308 this week to 22.41. So this is a snapback that was expected for a while. This card was super hot through the whole Commander 2017 release period, as a lot of people were trying to pick this up as a upgrade potentially for the Dragon deck. And number 1, Mox Opal from Modern Masters 2015, down 423 to 55.83. So it's a pretty significant drop this week, but don't let it panic you. I mean, even though Mox Opal may be seeing a little bit less play recently, it's still very, very popular. This is not a card that's going to bottom out. And I got to kind of wonder if some people are already starting to think about Masters 25. Good chance maybe this card shows up there, and because players are so fixated right now in Standard, and perhaps they figure, well, I'll just ride the next couple Standard metas and hold off on Modern until I know what's in Modern Masters 25 this March, you might see a little bit more softness in some of these cards that feel like they at least have a chance of being reprinted. So this could be partially what you're seeing here. All right, let's move on to the cards that have gained value this week. We got some interesting ones here. Number 5, Celestial Colonnade, up $1.46 to 37.34. Some of the control decks have looked really good recently in Modern, Jeskai control as well as Azorius control, so this is a key card for those decks. We're going to see another one in a few moments. Number 4, Karn Liberated, up $1.49 to 69.13. This is the new Phyrexia version, and some weeks Karn goes up a little bit, some weeks he goes down a little bit, but ultimately key part of Eldrazi Tron, a very successful and very popular deck in Modern, so the price point for this card will stay pretty stable, I think, around the $65-$70 mark. Number 3, Ruined Halo, up $1.72 to 21.99. Another part of those control decks I mentioned a few moments ago, and this being a Shadowmoor rare doesn't hurt its value at all. There was a much lower print run of Shadowmoor comparatively to other Modern era Magic sets, just due to the fact there was a downswing in gameplay at that time. Number 2, Olivia Valdarin. Okay, she's up this week, 253 to 758. This is the Modern Masters 2017 version we're looking at. And this one's interesting because we saw a lot of spikes due to Commander recently. And of course, it makes sense. Commander 2017 came out, a lot of people looking for upgrades. There was also a renewed attention on 1v1 Commander, thanks to that format becoming supported more by Magic Online. So there was a lot happening in that world over the last couple months. And we were pretty used to seeing Commander cards breaking into these countdowns. So this shouldn't really be that surprising. Maybe the most surprising thing about this is the fact that it seemed to come so late. Like, it felt like this would have been a great upgrade for the Commander 2017 deck, and it just didn't really move that much when everyone was looking at other cards. We actually did an upgrade video, and this is one of the cards we mentioned there, if I remember correctly. And what drew attention to it this week? Well, it just was additional buzz that came out of message boards as well as a podcast talked about it recently. So yeah, there was just some added attention over the course of the last week. And I think a lot of people said, oh yeah, you know what? That is a good upgrade, and went back kind of retroactively and grabbed it. Also interesting, the Modern Masters 2017 version saw this kind of spike where the original version didn't really see that this week. So you can still find that one cheaper a lot of times. So I think it was just kind of an unusual spike in the market where a lot of people were just having the same conversation. Coming at number 1, Horizon Canopy of 333 to 7868. All right, how do you explain this one? Well, the bottom line here is, yes, we know Horizon Canopy is going to be an Iconic Masters. It's going to be a rare there, and it has lost a lot of value. I mean, at the time of the announcement, the card was around $90, so it has come down a little bit, and it will continue to come down. But the problem is, we've never been in a situation like this before, where we knew what was going to be in a Master set so far ahead of time. So even though we've known for a while now that this card's coming, it's being reprinted for sure. As a matter of fact, it's coming November 17th, which at this point, time of recording, is still a ways away. I mean, not quite 2 months away, but players still have to play Magic, right? Like, they still have to go to tournaments, and if you're planning to go to a Modern event and you need Horizon Canopies, guess what? You just need Horizon Canopies. So we're seeing this weird anomaly where the card goes down a little bit, then it kind of bumps back up, then it goes down a little more, then bumps back up. Once we get closer and closer to November 17th, expect this card to start losing more ground, at least at a faster clip. All right, let's move on to Legacy and the cards that have lost value this week. So buyouts are still around. They have cooled off a little bit, but you're going to see here in the cards that are losing value, there's some cards, at least a lot of them, that were recently bought out. Number 5, Tetsuya Misawa, down 26.65 to 83.35. Recently a target of a buyout. Looks like maybe some of the copies are now being reintroduced into the market. Number 4, Pyramids from Arabian Nights, another card that was bought out, down 35.10 this week to 170. So again, it looks like some of these copies are being reintroduced into the market. Kind of crazy. This card was like a $10 card a few months back and could have got it real cheap. I did a video actually mentioning it, saying, hey, you should pick this up for your collection. It's cheap. It's going to be hard to find in the future. And yeah, unfortunately, it became hard to find very, very quickly. But now the price will go down. It won't go back down to where it was, unfortunately, but it will go back down. Number 3, Elephant Graveyard, down 40.98 this week to 208.97. It's another card that was bought out. It's been trending down over the last few weeks now. It did bump back up last week a little bit, but I think that's just normal stabilization while it was on the decline, so it continues down this week. Number 2, Word of Command from Unlimited, down 51.70 this week to 46.80. Another card that spiked not too long ago, which, I mean, could have been a buyout or a mini buyout, but it also could have had to do with some gameplay here and there. This is a good card in 93-94 format. Number 1, Jazam Jin, down $64 to $524.97. So this card was sitting around the $500 mark for a really long time. Recently, it was sitting around the $600 mark, but I do think the price point for this card has shifted up a little bit, and I think the average now is about $550 or even higher. So it has moved a little bit, but this is just normal stabilization right now. All right, let's move on to the cards that have gained value this week in Legacy, and you're going to see a number of non-reserve list Arabian Nights cards on the list. It just doesn't matter anymore. Arabian Nights is so rare and just so sought after that people don't care if they're reserve list cards or not at this point. You're going to see that on the list today. Number 5, Surrender Be Freed, of 23.70 to 486.99. Yes, this card was bought out a few weeks back, and it's still trending up just a little bit. It doesn't look like it's been reintroduced yet into the market, but expect this to start falling pretty soon. This is one of the examples, though, of Arabian Nights card, not even on the reserve list. If you want to get this card to play with, there's a lot of cheaper versions of it out there that you can pick up. Number 4, City of Brass, up 35.10 to 264.99. Well, second verse, same as the first. If you want a City of Brass, you can find them a lot cheaper than this because this is not a reserve list card. It's been reprinted many times. But again, this card has been very popular, especially recently. Number 3, Nether Void, up 56.32 to 460. This looks like it's being bought out again. This was a target of a buyout maybe a year or so ago, and it looks like it's just happening again, and it's still on the upswing. Expect this to start coming down soon. Number 2, Mirror Universe, up 122.86 this week to 282. This is a full-on buyout at this point. Now, it was starting to trickle up the last couple weeks. We did show it last week as one of the notable cards that might have been the beginning of the buyout, but this is a full-on buyout at this point. We'll probably go up a little more over the course of the next week or so before eventually we'll start coming down again. Number 1, Ernum Jin, up $333.77 this week to $448.27. Okay, obviously this buyout continues. This already started to trickle up a week or two ago, so the trend is still going on. And yes, another Arabian Nights card that is not on the reserve list. You can find much cheaper copies of this if you want one, but that original Arabian Nights one definitely got bought out. All right, let's move on to some notable cards of the week. There's a couple interesting stories here, so let's just see what's going on. Varath's Shapeshifter is our first card, down $5.75 this week to $9.99. Even though week to week it is down, a little over a week ago it had a small spike, so I wanted to just call it to your attention because it is actually a really cool commander card. There are some reanimation decks that are running Ramos actually as their commander that were picking this up. I think that's why it went up a little bit, unless someone was trying to buy out a reserve list card from Stronghold, which I'll tell you, unless that card's called Mox Diamond, you're probably not going to have a really good day. But I don't really think that's what it was. I think it was maybe some extra attention due to the fact that that particular commander build was gaining a little momentum. So yeah, it's a really awesome card. I just want to point it out because if you can find it for $10 or less, I think it's a really good commander pickup. Next is Rishadan Brigand. Okay, where do I start with this one? Well, this is, of course, from Mercadian Mass, down $6.59 this week to $10.73. Okay, at the time of recording last week when we did the video, some of these pirates from Mask were going up. I wasn't really sure why. I speculated that it was probably just a commander thing, that commander players that were trying to build pirate decks needed some cards to round out their hundreds, so they're picking up some of these old pirates. And I thought, oh, that could be what's going on. That might be what we're seeing here. Turns out it was a little bigger than that. Actually, what happened was at the time of recording, there was some murmuring rumors going on about a new legacy deck featuring pirates called the Popeye or the Pirate Stompy deck. It was being leaked out from some pros, and later on that day, actually, it kind of exploded into this big thing on social media about this deck, this new legacy deck, how great it is, that it's running these cards from Mercadian Masks, it's a pirate deck, and people started going crazy over this idea and started buying up cards and buying up cards like this one, for example. So what we saw last Saturday was the beginning of the spike. It actually spiked much harder after the video was released. But since then, it's all come back down. Why is that? Well, it turns out that it was a hoax. The pros that were talking about this deck were doing it as a joke, and it was a hoax. And regardless of what you think about that, I mean, some people thought it was funny. Other people thought that it was maybe reckless to take advantage of players as well as the secondary market in that way. But I think you can learn a few things from this story. First thing you can learn from it is just how scary the market actually is and how unstable it is. I mean, just a rumor like that comes out and people don't even bother to test their decks or test the cards or anything. They just start trying to spec on cards. Very, very dangerous practice for a market. And that's what causes these huge swings back and forth in this market, which shakes confidence, and nothing hurts a market more than shaken confidence. So leading to potentially some big crashes in the future. So it is an indicator of how unstable the market is. Secondly, like I just said, if you are going to speculate on any cards as far as deck building, you should probably check those out first. In other words, play test with proxies. I think that's a huge lesson to learn here. If you hear a deck's good, don't just take someone's word for it. Play test with proxies first before you start making purchases, especially expensive purchases. I mean, if the card's cheap, I get it, but why not test it out, save your money, and be safe? And the third thing we learned from all this, I think, is just how hungry the legacy players are for some innovation. I mean, yeah, we see some changes with the banning of top and stuff, but I mean, the format feels very cemented, and I think people really wanted this to be a thing. Unfortunately, it wasn't, so here we are. There are a couple more cards from this deck list, quote unquote, that we'll talk about in just a second too. Here's the next one, Rishadan Cutpurse. Now, this one was a common. Week to week, it is up 9 cents to 34 cents, but it is, of course, already coming down. Gifted Etherborn up $1.37 this week to $3.08. This is showing up in some sideboards of some decks in Standard, actually. I think a lot of players were playing it as a counter to perhaps Dinosaur decks when there was a lot of thought that those decks might be bigger in the meta. So we'll kind of have to see how that unfolds. But even regardless of Standard, this is still a great pickup for those Vampire Commander decks, which are very popular right now. Rashad Footpad, here's the third one of these Pirates, up 201 week to week to 750, but again, this one's coming down pretty hard too now. Telekinesis. This is from Legends. It's a reserve list card, up 875 this week to 3437. I wanted to call this one out in particular because it's still a very affordable card. It's starting to tick up. This could be the beginning of a buyout. So just a heads up, I'm afraid this is a card that's going to show up like next week, going up $150 or something. So I don't know if that's really going to be the case, but just a call to your attention. If this is a card maybe you wanted to pick up, was on your back burner, this might be a good week to do it. You never know. And finally, Aiden Oakenshield, up $23.50 this week to $97. This card definitely was a target of a buyout, and the price continues to go up. So these cards haven't been reintroduced yet to the market, but I do expect them to start falling relatively soon. All right, with that being said, those are the cards for today. So we will do a special edition of the Market Watch early this week where we look at Ixalan, much like we did last week. There's a lot to talk about there. So until they stabilize a little more, like I said earlier in the video, I'm not going to incorporate them into the regular show. It'll probably be another week or two, but once they stabilize, we'll get them in here. But we will definitely still talk about them, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, though, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.